Okay, so we're going to get started. So I wanted to create a video to explain the common remedies for all sorts of menstrual cycle issues because so many women have issues with fibroids, endometriosis, heavy periods, heavy cramping, um, irregular periods, PMS, depression. So that menstrual cycle is so common. The menstrual cycle problems are so common that women don't know what to do. What can I do naturally? Because there's so many things out there. I have had a chance to work with a lot of people over many years to figure out what works, what doesn't work. This webinar is on showing you the most common problems and the solutions that work the majority of the time, what things I use. So I created a little presentation through my PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and work that right now. Let me see how this works here. Let me present to everyone. Good, and I'm going to expand this. There's a button. Let me just find it. Let's see. I think it's. Let's go to presentation, slideshow. I think it's. Okay, let me see right here. Okay, good. I got it. All right, so what are the best supplements to support a healthy menstrual cycle? First, let's talk about the symptoms of estrogen dominance. Most cycle issues occur because the estrogen is too high in the body. It's not symptoms of low estrogen, it's too high. Estrogen is the female hormone that gives the female the characteristics and that separates a male from a female. So the more estrogen they have, the more female characteristics they're going to have. Estrogen also gives a female their shape because it holds weight in the lower part of the body and it increases breast size. If you look at the shape of men, they don't have big hips or they don't have weight in the hips. And so it creates the female body. It also is involved in fertility and the making the uterus fertile to have a baby. So if there's too much or too little, there's going to be a problem. But the problems with too much estrogen are PMS, moody, irritability, menstrual cramps, heavy bleeding, irregular cycles, fibroids, endometriosis, ovarian cysts, fibrocystic breast, postpartum depression, infertility. Yeah, so it's quite extensive. An average female will release right around 400 eggs in their lifetime. Okay, 400 eggs. And the way it works is 1 month an ovary releases an egg from one side, and the next month the ovary releases another egg from the other side. And so if you notice every other month you're getting like acne on one side of your face versus the other, or problems with one side versus the other, we know it's one of the ovaries which is the problem. It's not both. So the ovary and the female reproductive organs take a beating because of the amount of shedding of blood and tissue that happens every single month. So it's quite a stressful thing to the ovaries and the uterus. So let's just take a look at what happens. We have a 28-day cycle that occurs, and at day 14, right in the middle, you have what's called ovulation. And ovulation is when the person is most fertile. Okay, so that means that the highest fertility, and the egg is released and it goes down the fallopian tube into the uterus, and that is the highest chances of getting pregnant. And there's kind of like a 4-day window, but who knows? I mean, some women can get pregnant right in their period, so because they're so fertile. So these are just kind of guidelines. Now, the reason I'm showing you this fluctuation right here, just look at the orange line right here, that cycle that goes up. The first spike, that is estrogen. Okay, so what happens right during your ovulation, you have a spike of estrogen, and then about maybe a week later, about a week before your actual period, you get a spike of another hormone called progesterone. Okay? So now, depending on where you get symptoms, we can kind of tell which hormone is the problem. So if you have a lot of problems 1 week before your period, then we know the problem is progesterone. And if you have a lot of problems right in your ovulation or during the period, we know it's estrogen. Now, Dr. Lee wrote a book on the menstrual cycle, and his thing is progesterone cream, which is for estrogen dominance, because progesterone and estrogen work together to balance each other. So in other words, when one goes up, the other one goes down. So you could indirectly bring down estrogen by taking progesterone. So that's one thing you can do. But my question is why? Why do you need to take anything? I mean, what's really causing the problem? That's what we're going to get into. So as far as cysts that grow on the ovaries or in the breast for that matter, that's an estrogen dominance thing. So in the brain, you have these glands up here that send communication down to the ovary. And then what happens, the ovary releases its hormone, and it's supposed to go back in the blood and create a feedback loop up to the brain on a whole site. It's like a little circuit right here. So if there's anything that blocks this circuit, it can either increase or decrease the amount of output of that hormone. And that's why birth control pills, if you take birth control pills, you're taking estrogen, it stops this feedback loop, and it stops your cycles. It interferes with the cycles. But of course, it comes with a package. It has side effects. But we have to start looking at ovary problems from the viewpoint of what's the communication cycle that occurs through the body. If there's too much hormone, you'll get a cyst. If there's not enough hormone, you'll get a shrinkage of that gland. Okay? So now what causes the ovary to produce too much hormone? Well, there's this thing called endocrine disruptors. Okay, that would be like all the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, certain pills like that mimic estrogen, synthetic hormones in the food supply, industrial chemicals, even certain makeups. So your ovary is very sensitive to these chemicals because they're like sponges for these chemicals. Why? Because these chemicals can have the capacity to mimic estrogen. So basically, when you're exposed to this, you're exposed to estrogen, and it can create alteration in your own tissue. So let's see, what part of your body has receptors for estrogen? You have the ovary, you have the thyroid, you have the breast tissue, you have the uterus. Those are really, they're like magnets for estrogen and chemicals. So especially if you're consuming them from the food supply. Yeah, and I'm talking about GMO as well. Without proper estrogen, you have a lot of issues as well. So you might find that after menopause, for example, you might have some deficiencies of estrogen, and it can affect your mood, your brain function, your skin, your cardiovascular, immune, binge eating. But my thought is, instead of jumping to start taking estrogen, why don't you work on the part of the body that backs up the ovary during menopause? And that would be the adrenal gland. So you have two adrenals on top of the kidney, and they also produce estrogen, and they're there to back up the ovaries during menopause. If you take care of them and strengthen them, then you won't get effects like hot flashes and night sweats, those type of things. So one of the best remedies for ovary imbalances would be the ovary support formula. It has all the herbs that help balance estrogen, but it also has sea kelp. Why is sea kelp? Because sea kelp has a very special plant-based iodine that is really good for cysts. Fibrocystic breast, ovarian cysts, a little sea kelp will really help reduce those things. Now, the other thing that ovary support formula has, in addition to the sea kelp and all the other estrogen balancing properties, is it has Glandulars. It has glandular for the ovary, for the uterus, for the adrenal, and for the anterior pituitary. That's the front part of the pituitary. Why is that important? Because when we have a hormonal imbalance, the best thing to do is to consume things or take things that support the gland, not the hormone itself, because the gland is the thing that controls the hormones. So this is a great product because it supports not just the ovary, but everything connected to that ovary, pituitary, adrenal, uterus. So I use this as a tool for any type of heavy bleeding, menstrual cramp, discomfort, PMS, irregular periods, hot flashes. So it's good for everything connected with the ovary. And I would recommend taking, start out taking 1 3 times a day. If it's really bad, you can take up to 6. If you just get hot flashes, take 3 before bed. Now, if you only have cysts, let's say you have a cyst in the breast or a cyst in the ovaries, then you may want to just go with the sea kelp and make sure that the sea kelp is from an area on the planet that's clean. So I get mine from Iceland, which is probably the last place on the planet that's unpolluted, because we don't want to be taking sea kelp with pollution or chemicals, heavy metals in our oceans. So this is a good one. It's organic. But iodine is very, very important for the ovary, to support a healthy ovary, and iodine is a very common deficiency. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that you guys can see me here. So I'm just going to back out for a second. Okay. So basically, we have in the brain, you have 2 organs. There's a pituitary deep inside, and then right deep inside there's a hypothalamus. So they're 2 little master glands that send hormones down to the ovary. Every month they go in a feedback loop right here. Now, during menopause, and I just want to clarify this, yes, you lose the function of the ovary, but there's a backup organ called the adrenal. So that pituitary pathway shifts and starts backing up the adrenal. So again, if you have hot flashes, it's more of an adrenal thing, but I like the idea of taking the ovary supplements for that because it has support for the ovary and the adrenal all in one. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that and go right back to my slides because I'm going to show you something right here, and I'm going to flip. Yeah. So here's a picture. I just discussed the hot flashes. Now I'm going to just show you the picture here. You can see that there is something in your brain up in the hypothalamus that controls temperature. Yeah, it's like a thermostat. And if there's a glitch in the circuitry, you can get this flush of heat that goes through the body. But really, it's a failure of the adrenal glands to back up the ovary. So we want to support the whole ball of wax there. I want to switch gears to fibroids right now because fibroids are becoming more and more common, especially in African American females. And I'll tell you why in a second. But let's just tell you what fibroids are. Fibroids are extra growths that occur in, on top of, around the uterus. And they can grow very large to the size of grapefruits, and you can get multiple fibroids. And really, they're just mini tumors. So if we think about what a tumor is, it's like a precancerous situation. There's a couple things that you can do to stop the growth of fibroids. And you really want to understand this new word I want to give you. It's called anabolic. So there are certain hormones that are what's called anabolic, and they make things grow. So they make things get. The 2 hormones that are anabolic that basically can produce an increase of growth would be estrogen, like we've been talking about, but also insulin. And that is why in order to help you shrink fibroids, you must cut down the need for insulin. So that means sugar has to go down to 0 because the fibroids will just keep getting bigger and bigger if you don't change your diet. And of course, make sure that when you eat food, read the labels, make sure it's not genetically modified. How do you know? Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Because they don't list them. Well, one thing you could do is if you buy organic food, that would be non-GMO. Okay, so if it's organic, the law is they can't make it with GMO. So start consuming, especially like meats and dairy. Make sure you do not consume commercial chicken or beef. Always do organic, okay? So that will help you in reducing the things that can trigger fibroids. And then the other thing is that heavy period can cause estrogen that can cause fibroids. So really it's an estrogen dominant situation. So by fixing the period, the cycle using supplements and things, that will help reduce the size of fibroids. Endometriosis is also coming from the same cause, excess estrogen, but that would be an excess of kind of an extra tissue that can grow like crabgrass all over your abdomen, around the uterus. It can even go up into the lungs. I mean, it can go all over the place. So endometriosis is a similar thing. And then the remedy would be to do things to lower estrogen and do things to lower insulin. And what triggers insulin is sugar. So you're going to have to avoid sugar. Okay? So now let's, I'll give you some ideas on what foods are anti-estrogenic. And really, this is anti-bad estrogen. It's not completely getting rid of all your estrogen. It's just balancing out any bad effects from things that are estrogen or things that mimic estrogen, like those pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, chemicals that are in our food. So the cruciferous vegetables would include kale, Brussels sprouts, radishes, cabbage, all those bitter vegetables. They're really, really positive for cleaning up a toxic-filled body, and it's also really therapeutic to help shrink fibroids and things because it's anti-estrogenic. So you should be eating these foods on a regular basis. I take cabbage, and I use that a lot of times as my lettuce. I'll take kale and blend it sometimes with a little bit of berries and drink that down. I might do that maybe a few times a week. Some people do it every day, not a problem. So I'm always using arugula in my salad. That is a really good cruciferous. There is a concentrated cruciferous that I have. It's 250 capsules, and it has all of the cruciferous but it has some additional vegetables that are really good for the liver and the detoxification of chemicals. And it's organic, so it's organic beetroot, organic Brussels sprouts, organic collard green. I put in asparagus because that's good for the kidney, organic kale, organic parsley. Parsley has so much nutrition, but it's used as a garnish. It's not, people don't even eat it. Organic red radish root, organic cabbage leaf, organic garlic. Garlic is probably the #1 superstar of anti-cancer everything. I mean, it's the most powerful anti-cancer thing you can consume. And then organic turmeric, which is very impressive with things like anti-aging, anti-cancer. It's just incredible. And so this product also has organic sea kelp as well. So it has some iodine, because sometimes people freak out when you don't have the when you take cruciferous and you think it's going to affect the thyroid. Not if you add sea kelp. It will not do that. Okay. So now let's talk about polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. This is a situation where you have high levels of androgens. Androgens are male hormones, and that creates problem with facial hair, a mustache, hair loss in the top of your head, weight gain in the midsection, lack of cycles. So, and this other interesting symptom called insulin resistance. That means that the insulin is not working properly because the liver is blocking it, because the receptors are not receiving insulin, so that's insulin resistance. So the whole question is, Does PCS cause insulin resistance, or does insulin resistance cause PCOS? Well, from doing a lot of experimentation in my office, I found that insulin resistance causes PCOS. So here's a good experiment. You can test this on yourself. All you have to do is cut out all your sugar in your diet for a couple weeks and just see how much improvement you get from PCOS. I found it's massive, significant improvement. Okay, so really, PCOS is a problem with insulin because high levels of insulin or insulin resistance from eating too much sugar will increase androgens, the male hormones in females. Okay, so that's another remedy you can do. Now, I want to talk about birth control pills because a lot of women are on it, and I want to tell you, I know you might be upset if I tell you to get off of it, and I can't legally tell you to stop taking any medication, but I'm just here to educate you on the problems of birth control pills. It's taking estrogen. Most of the time it's synthetic. So you need to look at your options alternatively. So there is this thing, it's called a Lady Q stick. You can get it online, probably do a search on Google and get it from Amazon. And I even provided a link that you can check it out. I mean, I'm not involved with any other company with Lady Q stick, but you can just order them pretty much anywhere. But what this does, you put some saliva on this microscope and you look up into the light and it will give a pattern of like a fern leaf if you're fertile. And if you're not fertile, then it'll actually give you a different pattern. So it's a really good way to find out if you're ovulating or if you're not. Okay, so even if you're trying to get pregnant, it might be a good tool to see when your body is most fertile or not. Okay, so I'm just giving you options that maybe you never heard of before. Now, this is the thing I'm really against, Depo-Provera. So this is like an injection that you would get like every few months to stop your period. But the problem is, check this out, in 1972 and 1973, the FDA denied approval of Depo-Provera because it caused cancer. So then it was approved, I think politically it was approved, and then, I mean, all these women started getting cancer. So it creates a lot of side effects because it's so much hormone in like a one-shot deal that if you were going to do this, you just want to research it a lot more rather than just jump and do it. Get all the facts before you start taking this drug, okay? All right. So I am on this webinar doing a little special. If you want to get this product, it's buy one, get one free. You save $34.95. So go ahead and click the link at the bottom of this video in the description, and you'll be able to get it discounted. I do not know if this webinar is how long. You can always go to the link and check to see if I'm doing the special. Now, when you go to the website and order it, it will not have the discount until you press order, and then you'll see a button that says 2 for 1, okay? So that's how it works. And again, just to tell you, probably for a nice global support of all the problems I talked about, this would be the #1 product to get. It has herbs to help balance estrogen if it's too low or if it's too high. So it doesn't matter if it's too high. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to balance you. It has the sea kelp. It has the glandular for ovary, uterus, adrenal, pituitary, and that's really the key right there. That will support you. Now, if you're having a real severe period, you can take a little bit more during the period, but I recommend taking it before you get the period to prevent these issues. But you really have to understand what a normal period is. A normal period should not have heavy cramping and things. You shouldn't have the amount of symptoms that people, say that it's normal. It's not normal to have heavy cramping, heavy bleeding, heavy PMS. It is not normal for that at all. So I recommend that you try it and see if it can help you. Let me just pull something up right here. Okay, I think you can see this. You might, if you can't see this, I'm pulling up a little slide. You can see the link below. But here's what I recommend. Go ahead and try the product. If it works for you, wonderful. And if it doesn't work, just call us up. We'll give your money back. We do offer a guarantee on this product, but it's kind of a no-brainer because it is a high level of success. There's a lot of products that I have. This is one that works on a high percentage of the time. So I want to thank you for coming to this webinar, and I hope you got some valuable information. And please share with me your success after you apply this information. I'll see you in some upcoming videos. Have a great day.